Hi, I'm Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how my family's greed and arrogance led to their biggest regret. Sometimes the person you underestimate the most turns out to be the one holding everything together. In my case, that truth came with a price that would change our family forever. I grew up in the shadow of my older brother, Michael. He was the golden child, straight A's, prestigious university, and a career in investment banking that made our parents beam with pride. Meanwhile, I chose a different path, one that my family never understood or respected, but life has a way of revealing truth in the most unexpected ways. Our story really begins 5 years ago, when our father's health took a sudden turn for the worse. He had built a modest real estate business, owning several commercial buildings in our city's growing downtown area. As his condition deteriorated, someone needed to step up and manage the family's affairs. Michael, despite his financial expertise, was too busy with his banking career to help. That's when I made a decision that would shape our future. I started working from home, managing not just our father's care, but also quietly learning everything about his business. My mother and brother saw this as me giving up on a real career. Little did they know, I was building something much bigger. Another day of sitting at home doing nothing? My mother would say during her daily visits, "Your brother works so hard at the bank, and you're just here." Her words stung, but I kept focused on my goals. What my family didn't know was that I had been using my computer science degree and business acumen to transform our father's traditional real estate business into a modern, digital-first enterprise. While working from home, I developed property management software that caught the attention of major investors. Within 2 years, I had quadrupled our company's value and quietly became the majority shareholder. The irony? My family lived in one of our company's most prestigious buildings, thinking it was still part of my father's old business. They had no idea that I now owned not just that building, but an entire portfolio of properties across 3 states. My brother Michael would often visit, flaunting his latest bonus or promotion. "This is what real success looks like, Sarah," he'd say, gesturing to his expensive suit. "Not everyone can handle the corporate world like I do." I would simply smile and nod, knowing that my company's quarterly profits exceeded his annual salary many times over. Things came to a head during our father's final days. He had been in and out of consciousness, but in one lucid moment, he called me to his bedside. "Sarah," he whispered, "I've always seen your potential. You remind me of myself when I started always thinking differently. I'm sorry I didn't defend you more." Those words meant everything to me, but they also sparked a family crisis. My mother and brother, overhearing this conversation, became increasingly hostile. They worried about their inheritance, assuming I had manipulated our father in his weakened state. After father's passing, Michael took charge of organizing a family meeting to discuss the future. He invited his wife Jessica, who shared his disdain for my chosen lifestyle. They decided to hold this meeting in the building's penthouse conference room, ironically, a space I had renovated just months earlier. The meeting started with Michael standing at the head of the table, acting every bit the corporate executive he saw himself as. "Now that father is gone, we need to make some changes," he announced. "Sarah, you've had a free ride long enough. It's time for you to move out and find a real job." My mother nodded in agreement. "We've indulged your behavior for too long. This building is family property, and you haven't contributed anything to deserve staying here." Jessica, ever the supportive wife, added her thoughts. "My husband has worked hard to maintain his reputation in this city. Having his sister living like a parasite reflects poorly on all of us." I sat quietly, letting them continue their tirade. They had no idea that every word they spoke was being recorded by the building's security system, a system I had personally upgraded. "And another thing," Michael continued, his voice getting louder, "I've already spoken to father's old business partners. They agree that I should take over the company. You clearly don't have the skills or experience to handle real estate." That's when I finally opened my laptop and connected it to the conference room's display screen. "Before you continue, there's something you should see," I said calmly. The screen came to life, showing the company's current organizational structure, property holdings, and financial statements. At the top of everything was my name, CEO, and majority shareholder. The room fell silent. Michael's face turned pale as he realized what he was seeing. Our mother grabbed the table for support, her world turning upside down. "This building you're so eager to evict me from? I own it. The company you think you're taking over? I've been running it for the past 3 years. Those old business partners you spoke to? They report to me." Michael lunged for my laptop, but I calmly closed it. "Everything is already documented and legally binding. Father saw my potential and privately supported my vision for modernizing his business. While you were bragging about your bonuses, I was building an empire." "You're lying," Michael shouted, his carefully maintained corporate composure cracking. "This is impossible. You've never worked a real day in your life." I pulled out a folder containing all the legal documentation, contracts, board meeting minutes, and financial reports. "Actually, brother, I've worked every day for the past 5 years. Just because you couldn't see my value doesn't mean it didn't exist." Our mother, finally finding her voice, tried a different approach. "Sarah, honey, we're family. Surely we can work something out. Your brother has the experience to help you manage all this." I stood up, gathering my things. "Family? You've made it very clear that I'm not family. I'm just a parasite, remember? Well, this parasite is now your landlord." The look on their faces was something I'll never forget. Years of condescension and dismissal crashed down around them as they realized the truth about who really held the power in our family. But this was just the beginning. Their reaction to this revelation would lead to a series of events that would test not just our family bonds, but also my resolve to stand up for myself. The real storm was yet to come, and with it, decisions that would change all our lives forever. As I walked out of that conference room, leaving my family in shocked silence, I knew there was no going back. The truth was out, and now we would all have to live with the consequences. But I was ready for whatever came next, because for the first time in my life, I was standing in my full power. The next few days would bring challenges I never expected, as my family's true colors would show themselves in ways that would shock even me. But that's another chapter in this story of family, betrayal, and the price of underestimating the quiet one who watches and waits. The aftermath of the conference room revelation was like the calm before a storm. For 3 days, my phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from family members, but I maintained my silence. I knew my brother well enough to know he wouldn't accept defeat easily. I was right. On the 4th day, I received an urgent email from one of our company's board members. Michael had been approaching our investors, spinning a tale about my mental instability and lack of business experience. He was trying to stage a corporate coup. "Your brother seems very concerned about the company's direction," the board member wrote. "He's requesting an emergency shareholders meeting to discuss leadership changes." I couldn't help but smile at Michael's predictability. What he didn't know was that I had anticipated this move years ago. While he was busy bragging about his corporate achievements, I had been building unshakable relationships with our key investors and board members. My mother, meanwhile, had taken a different approach. She began a campaign of emotional manipulation, reaching out to every relative and family friend with her version of events. According to her, I had stolen the family business while caring for our dying father, taking advantage of his weakened state to seize control. "How could you do this to your own brother?" she wailed during one of her voicemails. "He's worked so hard in finance. He knows what's best for the company. Your father would be ashamed of your greed." The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. For years, they had lived comfortably in one of my buildings, enjoying the fruits of my labor while dismissing me as worthless. Now that the truth was out, they were calling me greedy. I decided it was time to show them exactly how much they had underestimated me. I scheduled the shareholders meeting Michael wanted, but on my terms. The venue? The headquarters of our company's newest acquisition, a luxury hotel chain I had purchased just months earlier. The day of the meeting arrived, and I made sure every detail was perfect. As our shareholders and board members filed into the hotel's grand ballroom, I could see Michael's confidence wavering. He had expected to walk into our old family business's modest offices. Instead, he was facing the reality of how far I had taken our father's legacy. "Before we begin," I announced to the assembled group, "I'd like to present our company's latest performance reports." The screen behind me lit up with graphs and figures that made several board members gasp in appreciation. Our company's value had increased by 400% under my leadership. Michael stood up, straightening his designer tie. "These numbers are impressive," he admitted, "but they don't tell the whole story. My sister lacks the formal business training to lead a company of this size." As someone with extensive banking experience, "Excuse me," interrupted Maria Santos, one of our senior board members. "Are you referring to the same sister who developed our proprietary property management software? The one that's now being licensed to major real estate firms across the country?" I watched as Michael's face reddened. He hadn't done his homework. He didn't know that our company's software division, which I had built from scratch, now generated more revenue than all of our physical properties combined. "Or perhaps," continued another board member, "you're talking about the sister who predicted the downtown development boom and acquired key properties at below market rates? The one who turned our family's local real estate business into a national corporation?" My mother, who had insisted on attending, stood up from her seat. "But she's never even worked in an office. She just sits at home all day on her computer." That's when I played my trump card. Mrs. Chen, I addressed her formally. Would you like to see what I actually do all day? With a click, the screen changed to show a live feed of our Global Operations Center, a state-of-the-art facility I had built in the building's basement, right under their feet. Dozens of screens showed real-time data from our properties across the country. Teams of professionals, all hired and trained under my leadership, were monitoring everything from occupancy rates to maintenance schedules. While you thought I was just sitting at home, I explained, I was building this. Every system, every process, every line of code was developed right here. That computer you dismissed? It was the command center for a business revolution. The room fell silent. Even Michael seemed to deflate as he realized the full scope of what I had built. But I wasn't finished. Now, I continued, let's discuss the actual purpose of this meeting. Michael has suggested that my leadership is inadequate. I propose we put it to a vote. The voting was swift and unanimous. Every board member and major shareholder stood behind my leadership. Michael's attempted coup had failed spectacularly. As the meeting concluded, my mother approached me with tears in her eyes. Sarah, please, she begged. We're still family. We can work this out. I looked at her carefully, remembering all the years of dismissal and emotional abuse. You're right about one thing, I replied. We are family. That's why you're not being evicted from your apartment immediately. You have 30 days to find a new place to live. You can't do this, Michael exploded. That apartment has been our family home for years. Actually, I corrected him. It's been a company property for years. You've been living there rent-free because I allowed it. That arrangement is now terminated, but life has a way of delivering poetic justice. 2 weeks later, Michael's bank underwent a major reorganization. His position was eliminated, and he found himself struggling to find a new job. It seemed his reputation for arrogance had caught up with him. My mother eventually moved in with my aunt, her pride preventing her from accepting the generous relocation package I had offered. Michael and Jessica downsized to a small apartment in the suburbs, their dreams of taking over the family business shattered. As for me, I continued to expand the company, opening offices in 3 new cities. Our property management software became the industry standard, and I was featured in several business magazines as a pioneer in real estate technology. 1 year after the shareholder meeting, I received an unexpected visitor at my office, my father's old business partner, Mr. Zhang. Your father would be so proud, he said, looking around at what his modest company had become. He always told me you had a special spark. That's why he signed everything over to you before he passed. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. He never told them, did he, about our plans? Mr. Zhang shook his head. He wanted you to succeed on your own terms, without their interference. He knew they would try to take control if they found out too soon. Those words brought me peace. My father had seen my potential all along, silently supporting me while I built something remarkable. His faith in me had been the foundation of my success. Today, our company continues to thrive. Michael occasionally sends messages through mutual friends, asking about job opportunities, but I maintain my distance. My mother has started telling relatives that she always knew I would be successful, conveniently forgetting her years of criticism. I've learned that success is the best revenge, but it's not about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Those quiet days working from home, which my family saw as worthless, were actually the foundation of an empire. Sometimes, the person they underestimate the most turns out to be the one they should have valued all along. The greatest satisfaction isn't in watching them regret their actions, but in knowing that I stayed true to myself and my vision. My father's legacy didn't just live on, it evolved into something greater than anyone could have imagined. And it all started with a girl they thought was just sitting at home on her computer. As I stand in my office today, looking out over the city skyline, I can't help but smile. The buildings that dot the horizon tell a story, my story. A story of perseverance, of quiet determination, and of the sweet satisfaction of proving that success doesn't always look the way others expect it to. The company continues to grow, but more importantly, I've grown too. I've learned that family isn't always about blood, it's about respect, support, and understanding. The team I built around me, the people who believed in my vision even when my own family didn't, they've become my true family. Sometimes I think about that conference room meeting, about the looks on their faces when they realized the truth. But those memories no longer hold any power over me. I built something bigger than revenge, something that will last longer than their regret. In the end, this isn't just a story about proving my worth to my family, it's about proving it to myself. And that, more than any business success or financial achievement, is the greatest victory of all.